let's acknowledge the good friends of the Loft Party Podcast. The Majestic Restaurant and Pendergast Club, 931 Broadway in Kansas City, Missouri. The J. Rieger Kansas City Distillery. Oh, so good. Now onto our regularly scheduled program.
Just not getting it.
Now, welcome everybody out there. The Good Times with Good People Company proudly presents the Loft Party Podcast, where it is always about good times, good people, and good talk. Please subscribe to the Loft Party Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. And be sure to tell a friend. You have received your invitation, and welcome to the party. I'm your host and moderator, Rio, and let me introduce you to the roundtable. So we have our returning champion, Chris O'Connor. He is the co-owner of Liquid 9 Broadcast Media. We have our own personal brain mass, Brian Massey. He is a market analyst with True Media, and the anonymous female, because she doesn't want you to know her name. And today's topic, we decided on last week that we were going to take a diversion from all the politics talk, although there was quite a bit going on this week, and I almost made an executive decision to switch back to our normal scheduled program. But this week, our topic, which came up in last week's podcast, is called Mortgage on Your Brain, which is really a discussion about, it started with the things that you don't learn in high school. When we were growing up, and a lot of schools still don't do personal finance, so they don't really teach you about what the stock market is, or any type of financial literacy, or there's constant talk about entrepreneurship, small business being, the bedrock of the American economy, but very few schools, even at the collegiate level, offer any kind of courses that help you to know what that is or what that looks like. So I kind of wanted to talk with the roundtable today about kind of everybody's kind of personal journeys of how they got where they are, and their thoughts on those missing components, and how they feel like maybe America in particular could be different if we were to be teaching these things at an earlier age. And I actually wanted to start. Start young, and so I want to start with Brian, because he is one, our own personal brain mass, but two, he is the millennial at the table. So I'm sure, since I threw this out last week, your brain churned on this a little bit. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking actually going back through school, in middle school and high school. I believe we had an accounting finance class, but I was not required to take it, and I did not take it.
Okay.
I did take math courses, like calculus and physics, that sort of thing. It was an option, I think, and if you took one of those, you didn't necessarily have to take finance. But I don't remember anyone having to take those, which is too bad. Which is too bad, because I think that everyone could benefit a lot from it. I mean, I think most of my friends, I think even myself, when I first needed to write a check for rent, I wasn't even sure how to write a check.
Well, and I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I think there's a difference between finance and accounting and personal finance. Like, I think you learn a little bit different, I don't really know if it's different topics, but you learn it a different way. I think that's what we're missing. I mean, and they don't, when I was in school, they did a thing called Exchange City, and I can't remember what they changed the name of it to. But you actually went for a day. They taught you how to write checks. You had a checking account. you went to this little city and you had a job there, and you got paid by the hour. There was a bank you went and cashed your check at. You know, you had to keep your register. I don't think they do that anymore.
Yeah, now that you mention that, actually, I think maybe in middle school there was, in home ec, which we were required to take, there was probably a module that was about checking accounts, I think. But that's reaching so far back. I mean, that'd be 6th or 7th grade. And if that did exist, that was the only time in my whole career until I got to college, which we don't have personal finance in there either. That's got to change, right?
Yeah, well, I just find that people in general, you know, Americans in particular, but people in general, have no clue about, you know, money and how it works, let alone, you know, our larger financial system. You know, they have truly no clue about that, you know, but, you know, there's so many people that just can't even, like I say, keep their own checkbooks balanced. And you know, I often think that, you know, if this was something that was taught in high school, you know, it was, and not just like a small module in home ec, because I do think if schools even still have home ec programs, that may be a small module, and you know, and they go through that 1 week where, you know, you get the test on, you know, did you balance the checkbook right? But, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, like I personally know people who they just can't seem to not balance a check, so they don't have a bank account. So they just really so they don't have to worry about the fees for bouncing the check.
And that's so limiting.
So exactly.
It's very limiting because there's a lot of things that you want to do, that you want to buy and apply for. They want you to have some type of checking or savings account.
Yeah. It's also, on the other side, is you can go learn. It's not that hard to go on the internet and say, how does a checking account work?
But that's your generation.
But that's who we're talking about.
Right now it is. But in
Well,
general,
that's where we're starting.
But in general, that is not the way people in their 30s and 40s think.
Yeah.
Not naturally.
I would not agree with that. I completely disagree with that.
I think the people at this table do it.
I think there's
But
a
I can tell
proliferation
you-
of free tools online that has made it so much easier to do stuff. And I was laughing when you were talking about writing a check. I haven't written a check since 1996. You know, because there's been QuickBooks, Quicken, and everything else to get all my stuff electronically. I use my debit card for every transaction.
Yes,
I
but
don't
there
have
are
to
still
balance a
some
checkbook.
places that won't take it. They'll only take cash or check.
Those are places you probably don't want to be shopping, honestly, and I would tell them to screw off. So I'll just go, I'll find the place that takes Square, because everybody can take Square.
Yeah.
So that's nonsense. And then beyond the other big thing, we keep talking about balancing the checkbook. That's not where most people get into problems. They get into problems with debt, with accumulating debt, because they don't understand how interest works. And they have these massive payments.
But that's all part of personal finance.
It's not. It's a very separate piece. Because there's so many times, like you were saying in school, you went and you worked for a day and you got your check and then you figured out where it went and da-da-da. You're not accounting for student loan debt and the APR that you're paying all the time and high interest rate credit cards. And on top of that, people don't know they can't discharge student loan debt through bankruptcy. It's going to stick with them forever. But they mount that debt up so high because they don't want to work. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. So I think maybe people have a better understanding of literally just how crippling debt can be to you. It might change the mentality of someone, but I know me in high school and I did not listen no matter what. You know, I had to figure it out the hard way.
I think,
But did they even, no, I'm sorry to cut you off, but did they even have any type of personal finance?
Not at all.
Yeah, and I think that's, well, I think what you're talking about, I definitely want to go there because I think that's a huge part.
Just to be fair, I did not go through the public school system, so I have no idea if the public schools taught
They
that.
don't.
We had a fixed curriculum. There were only 30 people in my class. You took the class they told you to take.
Right.
So I don't know what other schools offer, but
They didn't,
we
and
definitely not.
like when I was in school, home ec had
Yeah,
nothing
for
to
me.
do with financial anything. It was all about sewing, cooking, stuff like that. I mean, yes, life skills, but like the company I work for did a pilot program and sent people through a personal finance class, and what you're talking about was part of that class. It was all learning how to manage your debt, how to either get out of or stay out of debt.
Sure.
How to keep your credit, improve your credit rating, all of that was involved in this class.
And also, yes, maybe some of it starts in high school, but I would throw this out, and this is slightly off topic, but not really. So take a guy like Brandon Rush, for example, who played college basketball at KU. It was clear he was going to stay 1 year and go to the pros. You should be able to major in basketball at that point.
Right.
The point of college is, to
Right.
prepare yourself for a job.
Right.
So instead of seeing him sit there in a stupid algebra class or English 101 and just pretend he's doing anything,
Yeah.
why not teach him how to negotiate with an agent or read a contract or understand how his
But I think
finances are going to work?
that's it though. That's still personal finance.
I agree, but that's at a college level, and they don't even do it in college.
Right.
And that's a dude
Well, and I
who
think
knows is going
that's-
to walk into millions of dollars, and
That's-
they blow it.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I
Yeah.
mean. Like, at no level of our educational system is it a real part of the curriculum. If it's there, it's this soft elective that you could take, and it's only for a semester anyway. But
I also think that
excuse me.
those that would find that important, those that understand the importance of taking that class, are probably already being taught by their parents and
You
have
would-
since day one.
You would think that, and I would disagree only for this reason.
I
The
don't
school
think
I went
so.
to that was not in the public school system was, and this is '89, was exceptionally expensive to go to. It was full of rich kids, and a lot of them have failed miserably because their parents did not talk to them about money back then. My dad would never discuss money with me.
No, that was a taboo topic.
Yeah.
When
Just
we
assume
were
that you
growing
grew up
up.
with money and
My
then you should know
parents
debt.
never, I didn't know until I was older really how much or little money that they had, because that was just my norm. But they didn't talk about if they were struggling to pay bills or, I've never hid anything from my kids. They knew what I could afford, what I couldn't. They knew what I made. They knew how much of that went to paying bills. And, there's 5 years difference between them in age. My son absorbed none of that. And the minute he started working,
It's true.
he was, until he now has his own place, was living paycheck to paycheck. Barely. My daughter, on the other hand, always has money in her account. She's always very conscious of what she's spending her money on, how much money she's spending. I don't want you to buy that. I want it, but I don't want you to buy it because I know how expensive it is. So she's hearing it and understanding it and realizing why she may not have everything that her friends have, or like she has a friend that her mother puts herself in debt so her daughter can go to every concert she wants to go to and have VIP passes. And I'm like, at some point you have to be realistic of what you can really afford to do. And sometimes you have to tell your kids no. But I don't think
I think, I'm in sort of a unique relationship with my family, because I would say over the past 4 years, maybe 5 years, I talked to my entire family about finances, and it's usually theirs, whether that be a one-on-one with my mom and helping her create a budget and all that. But as a kid, we never talked about it.
Yeah.
My parents didn't talk to me about it. And then eventually, my brother and his wife had, come to me and said, "Hey, can you help us build a spreadsheet for this stuff like you did, Mom?" And so we sat down and did it. So that was actually kind of fun. And since then, it's been more of an open conversation of, "Hey, this is what we want to do," and we're still using that. We're trying to budget out, and so.
I'll tell you what I think is kind of funny, because it kind of tags on what you're saying. I get more people constantly asking me for help setting up their business accounting then nobody ever talks to me about their personal finances. I still think there's this weird taboo about talking about personal finances and what you do, but it's okay to ask for business, or I'm going to be an entrepreneur, help me set up my, spreadsheets.
I think though too, I think if you know the person you're talking to is, I don't want to, better off isn't the word I really want to use, but in a better financial situation than you.
That's better off.
You don't, but it just sounds, yeah, it just sounds like if they're doing better than you don't really want to, I mean, I see that, you know.
It's funny to me that that's not the exact person that you would go to for advice.
Well, to me, that's exactly what my thought.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought. Like, you know, look, I am the richest broke person in the world. Like, I'm super broke, but I never, I guess, come across as broke. And broke is probably the wrong word. I make okay money at my job, but I don't have a job that pays me $100,000 a year. You know, I have a fairly regular job, but I have enough money to do some of the things that I like to do. Not everything that I would like to do, but some of the things, and enjoy the time with friends that I can enjoy with them. But I wouldn't be embarrassed, but I do know men and women, you know, who would be wholly embarrassed to say, hey, you know, personally, you know, I'm having some money issues. Do you think you can help me work through that? You know, but I personally, you know, there may be the only, I guess, pride issue, I guess, is, you know, that you had to get to a place where you needed to ask the question. But if I got to the place where I needed to ask the question, I'm going to go to somebody that I know is seemingly doing all right in life.
Well, and I think somebody that you can trust to be honest and helpful.
Well, yeah, I mean,
not
I try not
somebody
to.
I mean, I want to know the answer to the question no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a chance that I can be doing better, I want to know the answer.
Yeah.
And you can find yourself, because I saw one of the questions on here is about entrepreneurship.
Really?
You can find yourself in exactly what my position is, which is, man, on paper, got millions of dollars of assets. In cash, not so much. You know, I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of different levels of things. And I also think employees, like, again, being a business owner, they have no idea how much you pay for employees. Like, they don't have a clue what the value of their services is. I am one of the only employers I know that lets everybody have open access to our books so they can see it. Because when we started our company, my first business partner, she literally just multiplied the hours she worked by the hourly rate that she billed. And he goes, oh, I easily do $1 million a year in video editing. Well, you did like 80. You know, like $80,000. Like, you weren't working all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was so stupid. And then people don't figure in their taxes, don't figure in the cost of health insurance, don't figure in the cost of any of that
Well,
crap.
they don't. Yeah,
$100,000 is not $100,000 in the bank.
No.
That's not the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we use 33%. Your salary times 33% is approximately what you are as what you cost the company.
Yeah.
Because that includes
Exactly.
your benefits and vacation
And the benefits are huge.
Mhm.
I mean, you got to consider lost wages in there too. There's a lot of things to consider. So,
Yeah, I think it's interesting if we step back to asking for help. There's, I think, an interesting parallel to some of these things, and that comes to like a little bit of health. You know, when people want to ask for help, if they're not making the healthiest decisions and maybe want to get a personal trainer, for example, it takes a little bit of humiliation to say, you know what, maybe I do need help, but you also have to recognize that you're willing to admit to yourself that you're not making the best decisions. And how many people go and ask for help, get told what they need to do, and then don't do it?
Yeah, they don't want to hear, they're not ready to hear whatever it is, and then they lash out generally, or they quit doing it.
it is funny, as an employer, I can think of at least 3 times that I thought, Somebody needed some help with something, so we made it an employee policy to get everybody involved. So for example, we would get everybody a gym membership now with a trainer 3 days a week, just because there were people who were becoming less healthy, and I know it. And we pay 100% of health insurance, because if I didn't, I know the exact number of people who won't get insurance in the first place. You know, and all these little things that I'm like, no, if I don't make you do it, if I don't do it for you, you're not going to do it. You know, I remember, and I love my, I guess, ex-sister-in-law to death. She was one of the greatest people I know, super kind. But I remember 5-10 years ago, before she got married and everything, she used to complain so much about not being able to afford health insurance. But she was constantly able to pick up the plane ticket to go to Denver and see her boyfriend, and and the cable TV and the bar tab and everything else. Like, well, it's a matter of what you choose to spend your money.
Priorities. Yeah.
So I don't know. When people say they can't afford something, like, really, let's sit down and examine where your money's going. Then we'll figure
I mean,
it out.
I think that
Well,
there's
like
some
my
people
mom and
who,
dad, I can truly say, I know that they have a struggle to afford it, but they do it,
Sure.
and they pay it.
Well, they're probably getting older and it gets incredibly expensive. You can argue that the insurance system is broken, and I agree that it is.
yeah.
But when you are in your 20s, insurance is so cheap. I mean, it is ridiculous.
Well,
Like, they're
you're
giving
so
it away with a
low
Coke
risk.
can, man. You're like, it's like you have a coupon for it. It's nonsense.
So you know, it's interesting you talk. So it's about it's decisions, making good decisions, and really self-control, right? So you parallel that to, hey, should I go eat this giant buffet of food, for example? And then it's the same thing with finance. The new iPhone's coming out. Should I buy it? Can I? Yes, I have a credit card. I can go purchase that. So you're really delaying that pain till later, whether it's financial or health. And it's not just one purchase of an iPhone. It's every financial decision that you're making. After a while, it catches up to you.
Absolutely.
But if you think the decision's through, I'm more than okay going to a buffet and having drinks tonight, because I work out 6 days a week. I know exactly what my calorie intake is, and I know that that is a trade-off that I'm willing to make.
Right. So maybe you can afford it.
So then, yes, that at that point, that would be the thing. If you want to make a health analogy, that'd be the health analogy of being able to afford, you know, a buffet or something, you know, or a drink. So.
Well, and we've talked about that, like, I mean, you know, if you eat bad, you do have to counter that, you know, in some way.
So do
But
we
it's-
think that people are educated well enough to know that that decision to purchase something is bad if they can't afford it? Do they know if they can afford it or not?
Well, I think society is set up, at least up until 2008, it was set up to, you could have every credit card you wanted, and, you know, you could amass this debt, and you, I mean, $10,000
Don't
worth
worry
of
about it.
debt.
You paid off $15
Yeah,
a month.
$10,000 worth of debt will take you a lifetime to pay if you pay the minimum.
Bad
You
decisions
will never
are not
pay it
blamed
off.
on advertisers. You should. That is. Listen, I'm not okay with even the line of thinking. Eventually, you made the decision to take it. If you didn't read the contract that you signed, which I will admit the contracts on credit cards are stupid, but then don't
But
take
I guess
the credit
that's my
card.
point. We're going back to education. Do you know you need to read the fine print? No.
Listen,
So,
this country can never take responsibility for everybody's bad decisions. They just can't do it. And I would say the government, if you
I
want to go
don't
there,
think it's.
the government has equal part to blame. If you know anything of the Carter 1979 act, where he made it so that banks had to lend a certain amount of money in every radius that they had a bank, and all of a sudden unworthy credit people started getting loans because the banks were forced to do that to keep the bank up. Then Clinton doubled down on it in '96. Because homeownership apparently became a right in the country and not
Not a
something you
privilege.
worked for.
Well,
you know, and so for some reason it's considered wrong to rent a place. And I'm like, I don't understand this. This is silly. Like, I would love to rent a place. I hate owning a home. I think it sucks. I want out of it.
But I don't
And
think
it's not your greatest asset. It's one of
necessarily.
your worst traps.
If you look at the homeowners thing, it wasn't that people were buying homes. It was that they were allowed to lend money that they
That's not
beyond.
very fair. That's not.
It was they were lending money that was beyond the person's ability to pay.
That's
and you didn't pay enough attention to say, I can't afford that.
That is not entirely fair. What really happened was in '96, when Clinton doubled down on the act, they started lending more and more money to people who couldn't afford it to keep their branches open. And then they started packaging and selling those loans off
Right.
as bad debt, and then the bad debt got passed around long enough to where now all of a sudden we have a real problem. It's
Right.
unsecured.
We had too big to
you
fail.
know, we did, but I would not necessarily blame that on individual banks. I would say that system was created by, and again, no offense, because I know you guys are Democrats, and I generally vote Democratic too. This is a failure of the
Why do you
Democratic.
think we're Democrats?
Because we always talk about it. We've talked about it a million times.
I don't think I've ever said one way or another.
Sure, we have. We talked about
But you know
how
what?
much I like Hillary too.
We're really saying the same thing.
I think when
I think we
government set up
disagree.
bad policies for good intentions, you end up with stuff like this. Then you expect a corporation to go, I found a loophole. Congratulations for me. And then you have an idiot who decides to borrow. Listen, I can borrow a shit ton of money against my house. I'm not going to do it because I know what the consequence is. It's terrible. I have more debt.
But a lot of people
Yeah,
don't.
but
Well,
they
it
should.
goes I think-
They
even so
should. It works its
far-
way down from the bottom to the top.
Yeah.
But
well,
it goes even so far as
Go ahead.
cable companies. You get this great introductory package, and if you don't know enough to say, when is that, what's the full rate? Your bill all of a sudden doubles, and you have no idea that it's gonna happen. And then you get this bill that's, instead of being $80, it's $180. And what the hell happened? Well, you got the introductory rate for a year.
Right.
They don't tell you that when you sign up.
Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
They do not. You have to ask.
They
They
do.
do not.
Well, see,
They
this
do
is,
not.
I think, I think,
Absolutely
Time Warner
correct.
didn't.
I think this is the real problem. I think they do tell you,
Yes.
but they.
Do you remember?
It's such a in passing comment. It was like, so it's gonna be $80 a month, for the first year. And like, and
I would
and so-
challenge you guys right now for next week to bring back any flyer that you get that has an introductory offer that doesn't tell you what the length of the introductory offer is. That's patently illegal to do. It's not right, and you know what you're getting when you sign up for it. And by federal law, they have to disclose it.
But you're,
That
if
is
you're
filed
signing up on
federally as a
online or
promotional
on the
rate.
phone, they don't tell you
It
that.
absolutely is disclosed, and it has to be by federal law. And so the fact that you forgot a year later, and I forget all the time on crap like that, doesn't make it Time Warner's fault. It said very clearly $89 for your first 12 months. They all say that.
Yeah, well, my issue isn't the corporations or or the way the government has structured itself over time. I think my I guess more looming issue is a lack of general education in the country, because what happens is your parents, let's say, really don't know much about finance at all. And so of course they don't teach you anything about finance. And this cycle keeps spinning down where people are just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul their entire life. And so I really thought about,
It's a great example.
what if in high school or like first year of college,
This is for 12 months.
where
It
they
doesn't say it's
had
gonna
they had to take you through a full, like, it wasn't a semester
That's
course,
true, though,
it was
right
a year,
I agree.
of personal finance, which broke down from just one, how to like personally take care of like the checkbook, quote unquote, but also talked about how does the stock market even work? I think there's a certain level where you get really into the weeds, but I think
Those
there's
aren't the weeds.
But
That's how you
what
survive.
I'm talking about isn't the weeds. It's just I don't think enough people know how our financial system works at all. I think they just know I go to work for 40 hours a week, I get paid this much, my rent is this much, my car note is this much, and my daughter needs braces.
I promise you, nobody at this table actually fully understands how the financial system truly works.
No.
I think that is reserved for you.
No.
I don't even
Greenspans
pretend.
and that kind of crap.
I'll tell you the crazy
But-
thing. When I was in 9th grade, I learned about the stock market in history class.
Because
It
of the
was-
crash.
It was an assignment, yes.
Yep.
We
Scare you away from it.
Well, we had to pick a stock and we had to follow it for however long our assignment was. I want to say it was 2 weeks. We had to report on it. We had to do like, if we were investing in it, you know, like we had to do this whole thing, but it was all in history class.
Excuse me, people out there, podcast like
No, you're good. It's allergy season. I would love to see a program that's mandatory in public schools that seniors have to take. Promise public schools as they're state by state, so you can't, there's no
Yeah.
federal law that you can enforce.
Right.
But I would love to see a system where they invented a class, and I don't care if you check in once every month or whatever to see what it is, but you get a fictional amount of money.
Right.
That's your money. You get a fictional salary. You get fictional tools to use to balance your stuff.
Right.
You can choose to take out loans. You can choose to not take out loans. You can choose to invest. You choose to do what you normally would with a paycheck.
Exactly.
And then over the course of the year, because I think it's the length of time that matters.
Right,
Over
right.
the course of the year,
Which is the
you're
reason
great
that I
at it.
said I wanted it to be a year-long class, not just a semester
Or a day at the
or
pizza
part
shop
of a
in the small
semester
town
where they
city,
kind of gloss.
I agree with that. I think if they do that, it should be at the latest your junior year. I think it needs to be before you start getting presented college loan
That's
forms.
probably
Well, and a
more
lot
accurate.
of people, like
That's
some
probably
people
more right.
graduate early, so you would want it to do,
Well,
like
those graduating early might.
Because you're applying
Tend to
for
be a
you're
better
applying for
situation.
loans and stuff.
But my
in your senior
daughter's
year and
graduating
choose the
early.
schools. That's
Exactly.
exactly
So
right.
I would want her to go through
so
a person.
you-
I still would want her to go through a personal finance class
Yeah,
because,
junior year.
you know, I-
You would want.
yes, because I was explaining to her, like she was asking me how credit cards work, and I was explaining that to her, and
Yes.
yeah, but you know,
Well, and a lot of seniors can legally get a credit card.
Yeah, yeah. So you're
So
18.
you probably should be doing it as a junior. That's probably a good suggestion.
well, yeah, because the crazy thing is, like when I was a senior in high school, a lot of my friends that went on spring break, there were people there trying to get them to open up credit cards,
Sure.
and they did because they needed more money to spend.
And I think that's the problem with most people and
And it was
credit.
just like,
is
I
they
would
think
kick my
it's free
child's
money.
butt for doing that.
The flip side of it is I think you also have a real problem with the way credit scores are reported in that it is to your advantage to have credit cards.
True.
It actually hurts your credit score to not have credit cards.
To not have one.
Which is just absolutely insane to me. If you have other assets and things along those lines that don't get factored into your score. They get factored into some degree.
Right.
But your available cash and stuff that you can get your hands on at any point, regardless of the interest rate,
Exactly.
means more than anything else to the FICO scores.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to diversify your credit.
Like it truly, like it's amazing. Like when I look at my credit score, I get dinged every time because I don't have a personal credit card. You know, but yeah, I have a platinum Amex that says my name on it. You know, but it's not
But
reported.
it's your business.
Yep. And I can access tons of money if I need to, and then just nope, that doesn't count for you.
All right.
They don't count any of those assets.
That's crazy. That's something I never knew.
It's a very weird thing.
Yeah, if
It's
it's your
the
business.
health of your company, not the health of your personal credit.
Yeah, yeah. It just that's.
But then it should factor into available assets to me.
I agree
And
with
it
that.
doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should write a course and have high schools or have it be
Is your
available at high
master's
schools.
brain turning right now?
And then
Brain mass.
just make it an online course that people could come and.
I think you could partner up with an Intuit or somebody like that very, very easily.
Yeah.
Be a massive tax write-off for those guys if they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm sure it'd help them out because
It would have to
Mint
be.
is a free
too bad
product.
Lane's
It's
not
online.
here, man. He would be like all over that. All over it.
Yeah,
Well, maybe
yeah.
not. He might not at high school level.
I don't think necessarily that teaching somebody to balance a checkbook's a good thing. I think teaching them modern tools that you can access on your phone.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
is a
so when
great
we
way
talk
to
about
go.
balancing checkbooks, though, we're just talking about
Your
balancing
checking
your
account.
checking account.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No. But what schools do that it always is very painful to me
Mm-hmm.
is in this day and age where you have a calculator on your phone, they still make you do longhand division for years. I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need to know how that works because I know how to get the answer already. I just think that's
Yes.
stupid. The methodology
But at
of
the
how I
same
get there doesn't
time,
matter.
they don't teach people how to make change either. And a lot of people in this world have jobs where they need to understand that there's multiple ways to make change and not take 5 years to do it. I've watched somebody struggle with making and it's just like, how do you even have a job?
I don't disagree. It just reminded me of that Saturday Night Live skit where they were the bank that made change. And the guy's like, the guy came in with $100 and we gave him, we counted out like 3 20s and a 10. Well, our computers immediately picked up the air.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's one of the best lines ever.
This made me think of Chipotle, which kicks out your change from a machine.
Yeah.
That's,
Think of how much you lose.
yeah.
Think of how much would be wasted if they didn't.
It's funny. I remember, thinking about needing to have financial literacy or whatever in high school, or just math literacy. I remember we had our dean of discipline. Both of his sons went to my high school.
You had a dean of, I forgot you were in private school.
No. This is public high school. We had a
Dean of discipline.
we had a dean
Wow.
of discipline. Yeah. So,
That's scary.
so both his sons went to high school at the same time I did. They were one was a year ahead of me. The other was a senior when I was a freshman, sophomore. And Joe, they were the Munda brothers. Joe, the senior, captain of the football team, was the meatiest meathead I've ever met in my life. And his brother, that I cannot remember his name, he was on the baseball team. And I remember one day I was trying to get something out of the vending machine, and I needed to get change for a quarter, actually. And
What is that?
and wait, so I turned to him. I said, "Hey, my man, you got change for a quarter?" And he goes in his pocket. If I'm lying, I'm dying. And he goes, "All I got is 2 dimes and a nickel." And I go, "Don't worry about it."
I don't want to rip you out.
You're right. Don't worry about it. Thank you, but don't worry about it. Because I was thinking, wow. How are you breathing like that you couldn't immediately put together that you had change for a quarter?
So I was saying, with that, there are some people, no matter what you do, that you cannot help. Just,
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think what bothers me, and one of the kind of overarching topics that we talk about on this podcast is politics and stuff like that. But I think one of the overarching things that bothers me, whether it's finance or politics or even like pop culture stuff even, is that people are blissfully and willfully ignorant. Like they don't know, and they don't seem to want to know, and that bothers me because.
Well, no, it's like what we were talking about at lunch.
Yeah, it just bothers me because at the end of the day, if I would have known some of the things I know now earlier in life, I would have saved myself some financial heartache, and to tell you the truth, would probably already be having a company worth some real money, because just knowing that this is how it works, or that that credit card is, and I never thought it was free money, but that idea of you $25 a month, you can just, and the fact that does not work for really anybody, is those are things that I learned over time. But had there been in junior year of high school, a class that really took you through all of that, like you said, the entire semester you tracked a stock, you were constantly having to deal with balancing the money in your account, because you had fictional job that you were, collecting money from. And what does that mean? And the fact that you get to, let's say you get to pick your job in junior high school. So you want to be you want to work at Best Buy. Oh, okay, fine. So the average person that works at Best Buy makes, $26,000 a year. Okay, that's what you're gonna have to work with. Oh, I want to be a doctor. Okay, the average doctor after, high school and college and medical school and residency makes this much money. Their loans are gonna be this much. And like the fact that we don't in this country, because I do believe there are some countries that may have a better financial literacy program for their young people, but in this country, it seems as if as long as the football game starts on time and there's a cold beer and a hamburger or a hot dog that they can eat at that moment, then there must not be any cares in the world.
Well, I think you're talking about two different types of financial things here. There are the ones where you were mentioning, where people are blissfully ignorant about it. Or maybe they even know, but they're in denial, and they say, I know I shouldn't go buy the next new thing, but I want to.
But
I don't care if I
They're
can't.
keeping
I'll
up
figure it out.
with the Joneses.
So they're going to go do that. They know it's probably not a good idea, but they're going to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the side where are they truly haven't been educated about, well, let's talk about these student loans, for example, that you're going to take out. And yes, you feel that you were guaranteed a job when you get out, but here's what that job pays. Have you thought about that and how long it's going to take you to pay that back? And the fact that if you go into bankruptcy, that specific debt does not go away. So I think that's very different.
Yeah.
I would throw out a third side, which, again, going back to entrepreneurship on this, have you seen the size of the U.S. tax code?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Insane.
It's ridiculous.
There is no way you could possibly even begin to crack 10% of what really happens in that stupid thing. It's the size of like three phone books. I mean, it's just nonsense. And I mean, we recently discovered that we were entitled to hundreds of thousands of dollars of deductions because our accountant didn't know about a manufacturing law that actually includes video production, because California is losing so much video production to Canada. So they had lobbied, got it into the bill, and forever, since George Bush was in office, the younger one, we've been entitled to write off massive amounts of our overall revenue.
Wow.
You can only go back 3 years. That's all you can do. So
and how long have you been in business?
This law, I think, was passed in 2004. And Obama upped the rate on it, so in 2008. So we could have gone back a long time. That's a lot of money we're now talking about that we can't get back. But believe me, if I owed it to the IRS, they would take it from me. Mm-hmm. The state of Missouri came after us once for a ton of money. This was like 7%. They had this use tax, which most people don't even understand this. So if you buy something from out of state, like Illinois, which we did, bought a ton of equipment from there when we started our business, that's interstate commerce. By federal law, that should be sales tax free. But Missouri has a law, which they do in conjunction with Illinois, Kansas, and a bunch of surrounding states, where you have to then declare it as a use tax, which magically equals the exact same amount as what the sales tax would have been. And they came after us for that. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, this is just bullshit is all this is. I mean, this isn't even a legal tax in my mind. This is just crap.
Yeah.
So, but you're seeing all kinds of stuff like that go on. That guy who just wants to start a business that makes commercials or make apps or a website, whatever you want to do. All that stuff, there's no possible way you could ever know all that. And those are two stupid examples, but I mean, there's a billion examples like that.
And after a while, especially if you were just one person that wanted to create something cool.
Sure.
It's discouraging. After year 1 or 2, you're like, you know what, forget it.
Well, and then you're forced into the situation where you have to count on professionals, and then when the professionals are wrong, then what do you do? Because I can't be a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, and a business owner all at the same time. It doesn't work like that. And you have to pay an accountant when the accountant doesn't know shit, and you don't know that your accountant knows shit or not. You got a great recommendation. So she was wrong, and it cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I can't go back and do anything about it, and I'm responsible for the money. So, that's ridiculous.
Yeesh. That's crazy. So does anybody,
Well, I have a quick question. Is
Yeah,
it better to owe or that they got it that you should get back?
You mean in terms of your withholdings?
No, I'm just saying for your personal opinion. 'Cause it sucks either
I
way,
do not
but-
believe in giving the government any more money than they deserve. And for all the crap that Trump has gotten about paying zero taxes, I would say he had to pay at a corporate level, so corporations are taxed at an incredibly high rate. He didn't pay personal income tax, which is very different. But the Supreme Court's made it exceptionally clear, and I promise you, Bill and Hillary follow this as well, that you are legally entitled to take every possible deduction under the sun. You do not know any more tax than you are legally bound to do. So there's no reason that just because he's a billionaire, he should be paying at the highest personal tax rate. He's entitled to whatever deductions he can get by
Because he'll
the
run
tax
most
side.
of it through his company anyway.
Well,
so
no,
that
it's
he
already
doesn't-
taxed. In fact, I guarantee you, a C corp gets taxed first, and then the dividends get paid out. And so, really, a C corp is a double taxation system, which is a bunch of nonsense. In my mind, investors, to me is a real problem, and this is one thing I would change immediately, because they always talk about capital gains. Capital gains should be for people who do not make the majority of their income based on investments. Because once you make them, like a Mitt Romney, once all you are doing is investing, actually that's your job. That's income tax to me.
Right.
You should be taxed at the income
At the
tax
income tax
level.
rate,
But they won't do it. So that would be one loophole I'd love to see changed, but it's never gonna happen. Here's one other thing, and this is, I think, very dangerous. We keep talking about people should spend less and spend less and spend less and be more careful and do all these things.
I don't think it's been less. I don't think you should live outside your means.
By necessity, based on the way the economy goes right now, that would mean people spending a lot less.
But then-
because we're
then-
racking up debt. What I would say
Then
is,
we go into a recession.
well, that's exactly what I would say, is that all of a sudden you don't realize how much that would damage the economy, because it's people borrowing on their home equity lines and using credit cards to buy stuff that kind of churns the engine a little bit.
Well, we've inflated the size of what should be considered our market, right?
Sure.
So, I go back to iPhones. We have this many that we can sell. Well, if everyone's taking out loans, there's suddenly this extra money that a lot more people can now afford to buy them,
But the thing is,
where our market would otherwise be much smaller, which then affects, well, if we don't make them here in the U.S., but say we did,
We make pieces and parts. I mean, most of the glass comes from Corning and that kind of stuff, the Gorilla Glass and those kinds of things. Although they switched to sapphire glass
So
for
then the whole
some
thing starts
models.
slow, like the whole
But-
wheel slows down, right?
Yeah, I mean, you really, and again, keep in mind, it's a global economy at this point, and if you don't want to remember the facts, like what happened in 2008 caused a ripple effect in the market. What happened in Greece caused an enormous ripple effect in the market.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very, very, very global economy at this point. So,
Very. So, does anybody have any real position in the stock market?
I mean, I have quite a few stocks, sure.
I said, what about you, Brian? Nothing
Nope.
yet. Just
I mean, mine's all through my 401k,
yeah.
but it's all based on
Right.
stocks that we choose.
yeah.
But you can only choose from mutual funds, right? In a 401k?
I don't know.
You can't pick individual stocks in a 401k.
Yeah, I think it's
Yes.
all mutual.
It has to be
Yeah.
mutual funds. And one of the sad facts about mutual funds is that 80% of them underperform the market. And have they taught you how to, which ones to go for? Did you study up on them and really analyze those returns?
Me
all those things?
personally, I talked to somebody that knew the stock market and told them, these are the ones I have to choose from. I have to have my 100% come out of, how should I divvy this up? And
Right.
I've done really good with that. But I didn't,
Sure.
half of what I would have been reading at the time, I would have been like, what the hell am I even looking at?
Which is why you pay a professional to do it, hope they know what they're doing.
Well,
But
it's one of
it
the
was
biggest
just-
problems with
But-
Social Security.
Yeah, but that gets me back to asking when you know.
Sure.
And the fact that you were able to ask somebody that you trusted. I think.
Well, I
think
have some of my family that's what they've done their whole life is financial stuff, and they're very well off. So when I have a financial question, I will ask them, because I I see how they've done with their life and with their money and what they're
Sure.
doing and how they've, raised and taught their children.
Right.
So it's, like I have an uncle that they live in California, and when, his daughter got married, he sat them down, the daughter and son-in-law, and said, you need to come up with a budget. I'm gonna help you do this. And, he talked them through it, and they now own 2 businesses, and they're doing really well. And
Sure.
but I think it's going back to education. It's your parents being willing to talk to you about, I don't know when that kind of, I don't know, like, I talk to my kids about things my parents would never talk to me about. But you just have to be okay with asking the question and listening to the answer.
And I agree with you to a certain point, but to Brian's first very good point, there are 9 billion tools in the world that you don't need somebody to talk to you about, that you can figure out on your own, and you should. And I'm not willing to advocate the personal responsibility level of it to say,
I don't
listen,
think-
you should have gotten on this. Nobody was poorer than I was poor when I was in college. I mean, I was selling blood just to pay rent. And at some point I realized this is not the way I want to live my life. I'm going to actually take a little more vested interest.
That's why you always cold now.
That's true.
Give away all your
That's
blood.
true. But I mean, I worked 4 jobs because I didn't want to have debt. It freaked me out.
But that's the thing, and I totally agree with you. You have to have some kind of education to know where to look and to ask, and the tools that are available to you. But at the
It's called
same
the
time,
Google's machine. Everybody's got it. Like
not
come on.
everybody has
Really?
there are people that I work with
The
that
library
do
doesn't
not.
have
What? I didn't hear.
The
what you said.
library doesn't have Google. Your phone doesn't have Google. Nothing has Google. You can't look stuff up. Nobody has Amazon.
But you're talking about
and they
people
can't
that,
download
like,
the
you
Kindle
have
for
a different
free.
level of drive. Not everyone in
No, I was
this
poor
world
as
has
shit,
that.
and then I didn't want to be poor.
Right,
I mean, that's
but
all
not
that happened.
everybody has that. Some people are just stagnant in their life and they don't
That's
care
a much
enough.
larger problem, and that's not something
Yeah.
that education fixes, and it's not a systematic problem. That is a personal problem. And
Right.
congratulations.
But
Honestly,
we're-
I was actually thinking about that.
But that's what I'm trying to say. I agree with what you're saying. You don't take it's your, at some point, yes, you made the decision to do something that you knew was wrong, or you didn't, you have to take personal responsibility for that.
I was thinking about the stock market game if we had this in high school, and say you did it for 4 years. And I was thinking about all the people I graduated high school with. A very small percentage went to college. And I was thinking, which one of the people would have gone through if you chose a job, say, as a freshman in high school, and you were given whatever amount of money, and then they checked in every year, how that would end up based on, like, what would the correlation be, say, to grades? It was just interesting to think about, because I was thinking there's going to be people that go through and say, oh crap, that's due, if it's once a month, oh crap, that's due this week, and they go through and they just kind of check a couple boxes just to turn in the homework. And would they actually learn anything?
No, I think what would happen.
Because you're going to have those that do and those that
The
don't.
real program would have to be, again, electronically based. You would need to bring in a company like Intuit. You get fictional dollars. When you spend them, it has to be recorded and checked off on, so there's no way to fudge it. You can't do it, which I find interesting. And the other thing I think would be super interesting is if you presented people with 5 to 10 jobs. I wonder not just what the millennials would do, but what kind of salary negotiation they would want, because we get more and more people who negotiate for more time off than they do for a higher salary now. Because one overwhelming trait of a lot of the millennials is that they would prefer to have a lifestyle factor as opposed to a financial factor. And it's bizarre. It's, which is
And-
funny. 'cause
As a
then
business
you try
owner,
to
do you
get-
like that?
I don't give a crap what they value. I want them to have whatever they value. Like, that's the way to attract the best talent, is to figure out what that person wants. That's called a negotiation. What do you want? What do I want? Let's meet in the middle, and here we go. So I don't mind. I certainly don't mind paying out cash. Like, less cash. That's great by me.
You do pay different taxes on vacation time versus actual working time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is
It's
true.
a different
that's
tax
why
rate.
you have to track it. You can track it all in a bucket now, but you still, it's not taxable in the same
Yeah,
way.
if you look at well, I don't know about how you work since you work at home, but like on my pay stub, it has holiday, if there's a holiday within my pay period, that's taxed differently. Vacation time is taxed differently. You don't have the city tax
Yep.
on vacation time or holiday time.
But
It's
it's a
only-
lot of
yeah.
things. Like we had a kid who was pissed off the other day because he had, that's why he and his wife had a kid. This was, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And he was exceptionally upset that he only got 3 weeks off of work. Well, one, I'm only required to give you 2, and those 2 weeks don't even have to be paid. But I paid you for 3 weeks to not work, and that, which I thought was pretty exceptionally cool, you know. But he was just irrationally upset about the fact that he only got paid for 3 weeks.
What brought that on? Like he decided not.
It's bizarre. It's not understanding the way that the law works. And I didn't make up the law. It's like I tell people all the time whenever I have to do the accounting. I'm like, the IRS didn't ask me if we need to keep receipts. They just said you have to. You know, so when I ask you for the receipt, I don't give a shit what you spent the money on. I just need the receipt because I got to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and so the day they consult me, then I will say, no, I'd really love to not keep receipts. That'd be great. But they didn't ask me, so I got to do it.
Yeah, and ours is anything under or over $25 we have to have a receipt for.
Yeah, and there's different rules. Like I'll let people say, like in traveling, it's actually $75. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
But they're hyper strict on meals, hyper strict on entertainment. You know, all those kinds
Yeah,
of
we
things.
have to list out everybody that was.
That's the law.
Yeah, that
if
was
you have
at
a
the
turn in a
meal.
meal receipt, you have to put in all the names and the very specific business discussion that you had.
Well, I don't know how they do that. I think we put the name of the meeting and.
But you would probably be
And,
able to
yeah.
track it back.
Yeah.
How many
So, yeah.
how many employees does your company have?
About 23.
Okay.
It varies. I mean, like right now we have 23 employees, but we were also employing, 40 contractors, because we're doing a big shoot. But then those contractors will go away. But you still have to account for them.
Yeah.
Because in some states like California, they can turn around and sue you for unemployment even if they work for you for 2 days.
And that's even paid at a different rate.
Yep. And it's ridiculous. I'm like, well, you've accrued about $6 in unemployment, so congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's just silly. But if you don't abide by all of those laws, then you get screwed. So then your only other option is, well, now I have to go out and hire a payroll company who specializes in production insurance and payroll just to not get screwed later by the state of California. So, one of the many reasons
Do
I
you
hate
guys do
California.
your own payroll?
Used to. And then it just became easier to run it through our
Hire
accounting.
somebody.
Yeah, because it used to be that QuickBooks didn't electronically file all your taxes. You would still have to manually turn around and write checks and mail them out to the government and stuff. And in this case, they just collect the money, and I never see it, so I don't have to worry about it. And that's the best way to go. I mean, that's why they switched unemployment. It used to be that you literally, when the law was first implemented, you had to write a check for your unemployment tax and that kind of stuff. And nobody did, so they changed it to be the employer's responsibility to take it out of your check. So the employee never sees
Now
it.
the only people that don't are subcontractors.
Yeah,
They
1099ers.
Yeah, they still have to account for their own taxes.
But unless you're in California, where you're considered an employee for those days, which we still have to pay on them. It's ridiculous. A nonsense, stupid state.
So your business is a California-based business?
No, but we do a lot of shooting in California,
Okay.
so we'll have to go hire crews,
Gotcha.
which you in any other state would be 1099ers as a right to work state and all that kind of stuff
Right.
there. So
Okay.
we've had 5 or 6 people try to sue us for unemployment up there.
Sheesh.
You're not employed.
Wow.
Hired you to go get water from Walgreens one day. That's all you did. You know, I'm not paying you unemployment.
Yeesh. So, I think that brings us to the next segment, which was kind of, I just called it investing in yourself. I guess from 2 different angles, you probably and I definitely have an opinion on this as somebody who's dealt with the music industry on some level for the last 20 years. But being a business owner and now being somebody who can telecommute every day, talk to me about what you think the importance of self-investment is.
It's funny, when you started talking, I called up my Kindle just to see what I have on here. So I have the last 5 books I've read are on here. Small Business Tax Deductions Revealed, The Tax and Legal Playbook. One was that week. Deduct Everything. How to Pay Zero Taxes, Accounting for Small Businesses, LLC Quick Startup Guide, Taxes for Small Businesses Revised, the Quick Start Guide, The Economics of Audiovisual Industry.
Right.
I mean, at some point it becomes your responsibility to try to figure the crap out. Especially once I realized that my accountant didn't know everything, and especially things that are specific to our business. I'm like, well, you can't blame anybody else. This is now your responsibility to figure this out. So, and most of those books were free because that is not a high-selling genre. And so, if you have an Amazon Prime membership, they will most likely let you borrow the book for no dollars, read it, return it, and you're done.
So for mine, there was this, I purchased this programming book at one point from this online publisher for $10, or $10 or $15. And I couldn't even tell you what it was. It was something to do with JavaScript, I think. And then they messaged me like 3 months later and said, hey, we had this huge sale, all books $5. And I stocked up. I went through, I think I bought probably 40 or 50 books.
Wow.
I'm all over those. I do that too.
And I haven't read most of them, but I have them all PDFs now, and actually, probably shouldn't say this, but I put it all on Google Drive, and I've shared it with a couple people. Say, hey, if you want to learn anything about programming, here's everything you need to know, and here, you can flip through them anytime you want. And so I have those, so it's out there, and yeah, that does cost money, but let's talk about some of the skills that I use daily now. So I am doing data analysis now on marketing. Before it was on other operations projects. But all the math's the same. And there are free languages out there. There's one called R, which is a statistical package, one of the main services hosted by KU, so it's completely free. Go online, download the language. And I've taken at least 4 classes from Johns Hopkins University teaching how to do data analysis using R. And those courses are 100% free. You go online, you go to Coursera.org, and they have their actual professors there standing up in front of a camera and show you how to go through. They give you homework to do. And this was actually a sequence course, all the courses. So you take the first one, which was probably 8 to 10 weeks. You have to spend 5 to 10 hours a week doing it. And then the next one starts a few weeks after that, and you just take them right in a row. And by the end, you know how to program, you know how to do all this data analysis, and it cost me nothing. And now I can walk into a job. I now do that remotely, and it's been pretty great. And that's not the only type of course they have. They have anything you can think of now on Coursera, and it's actually in several languages. So I've taken classes from Johns Hopkins, one from University of Washington, one from University of Melbourne, and those were using other type of programming languages also, but very, very, and what was interesting about the one with the University of Melbourne is if you pass that class, which only 5% of people passed it, if you pass that class, they said in there you were more or less guaranteed a job offer. And I went through, and I did pass, I barely slid by. But you could go through and take it again if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And you can take it as many times as you need to learn.
Yeah.
And you can actually email the professors, and they would get back to you, which for free. So why wouldn't anyone take advantage of that?
Yeah. Well, I will say to anybody listening in podcast land, you're probably listening to a round table of fairly self-starting people. So, I understand that. I understand that a lot of people won't, or don't. I should probably say is a better word. Take advantage of everything that's out there for their self-improvement. But I will say, whether you take a free online class or you ask somebody or you shadow somebody to learn the skill that you want to learn. I remember when I was a lot younger, I didn't know how to produce my own music. And I'm not necessarily good at just like online learning, but I had a good friend who he knew the program that I still use, Logic, and he had been using it from the PC days when Logic still put programs out for PC, and I really just shadowed him. And in shadowing him, like I was going to his home studio and I was sitting with him as we were working on, different songs, but I made a point to really pay attention to what he was doing. And it came a point where he had to leave his equipment somewhere at somebody's house. Just he was going through a bad breakup and a lot of other things, and so he wound up leaving the equipment at my house. And so one day I decided I was going to try my hand at producing a track for myself. And so I produced this track, and so he came over my house after work, because we all work day jobs. And I remember I said, okay, I did this track. I'm really excited about it. Want you to hear it, tell me what you think, because it's probably bad, but tell me what you think. And I remember he took his hat and he threw it across the room. He was like, "Motherfucker, you know how to make beats all this time." I was like, "No, I've been watching you all this time." And now, as far as tracks are concerned, now he comes to me and says, "Hey, I need you to arrange this, or I need you to work with the audio that I created, because I think I've created something solid, but I don't know how to take it from just a good groove to an actual working song." Mm-hmm. And but that's a skill that I developed because I really wanted to learn it. So I guess what I'm saying to everybody out there, podcast land, is no matter what it is that you're trying to learn, no matter what it is that you need to learn, whether it's how to take care of your own personal finances, or producing your own music, or your own video pieces, whatever it is, there's tools out there. There's tools out there. There's people out there that are willing to help, but you've got to take the first step and ask for the help that you need. And whether, like I say, whether it comes from a book or an online course or whatever, there are ways for you to learn what you need to learn. Because I think the worst crime that, I think, as taking things back to kind of our political climate, you have so many people who they look at the incoming president as this person's going to fix everything, or this person's going to save the country. And really, it's us as individuals improving ourselves on a almost daily basis to be better at things that we're doing, or the things that we want to be doing, that really churn the financial engine. And really, there's almost no president that's going to do that for you.
Well, they don't have the ability.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think
It's not even constitutional to do
which
that.
kind of gets me back to the point of people really not understanding how systems work. And you know, the office of the president, the body of our legislative branch, you know, our Congress and Senate, and our judicial branch are all set there to check and balance each other. So the president can't do everything. The Congress can't do everything. Our judicial branch can't do everything. But they work in conjunction with each other to keep this democracy moving forward on a day-to-day basis. And it really doesn't work very much differently in our day-to-day lives. We have to be willing to admit what we're not strong at, so that we can improve in those areas. And like I said, whether you have to buy a book or take a class or whatever, bless you.
Thank you.
Right, be willing to go get help on the things you're not
Be
great at.
be willing.
I would agree, but I
And-
think that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Surround yourself with people that make you better.
That's true.
Agreed
You
with
know?
that. Agree with that too.
Absolutely.
I do want to mention on this Coursera. So when I started using Coursera, there was maybe 10 courses. So it was fairly new back in 2010. Now there are 1,281 courses for free. And they span topics of business, social sciences, computer science, data science, arts and humanities, life sciences, physical science and engineering, personal development, language learning, and math and logic.
The one funny thing I do think that is a danger of the way, and I'm a victim of this, just a victim, not a victim, I'm just a moron, but this is what I did, and this happens to a lot of people, and it's a change in the way that people can learn sometimes, because now there's so many resources out there. The only value I ever thought school provided was a system of learning where you started from the beginning and worked your way up. So I remember when I was learning SQL for the first time, I just knew the problem I wanted to solve. So I would look up how to do the problem that I wanted to solve, and I'd find the answer. And it's like my Spanish. Like, I knew what I wanted to say, so I'd look it up, but I actually don't know. I can't say common phrases because I never learned to conjugate verbs, but I can say really hard things because that's what I wanted to communicate. And it gets weird. Like, you can get out of order really quickly where you don't know how to do easy things, but you know how to do harder things.
Right.
Just because you're looking for a specific answer and not wanting to know the system.
So you're instead of learning how to think, which is really what you're like, how to think within this topic, you're more of finding the
You're finding the answer.
to
The answer is what you want to do, and that's the only thing that I think. And it's not a major drawback to me. I'm still a believer that people should not go to college and do that stuff. I think it's a waste. I think you're just throwing away money. I think even if you took that and spent $25 a month on lynda.com, or better yet, did it for free on this site, great. I mean, whatever you want to do. In our industry, I literally have never seen a resume and that just throw them away. I just need you to show me your work and that you're good at what you do. That's all I care about is what you've done. So, but it is weird though that you skip so much and you bounce around so much along the way. I wonder if that'll ever be a problem that catches up with people. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
But then again, at the same time, going through that, you've learned how to look things up.
And I agree. But,
So you've learned that other skill set.
But, for example, there's more pieces to a job than that. So imagine like I've made no secret of the fact that I'm dying to move to Mexico at some point. I don't know the basics of the language. I just know how to ask for things I want. So I'm going to have to go back. So I will sound like a moron on a lot of things. And then they will go, oh, okay, I think I got this really weird thing that you said over here. But why can't you say the easy thing, you moron? And that's kind of what you're going to have to go through for a while. I know people who are phenomenal at what they do, but can't put together a basic email that reads coherently. It's like, well,
Yeah, very true.
That is amazing how basic business skills, you just somehow lose them, and in that way.
And I think it's because a lot of the time we do just look for the answer and not the methodology. But
we actually had to send people through a writing class because they would send emails in the way they text.
Right.
And it was like,
where you're saying R and it's literally the letter R.
Are you? Yeah, or, they would say something and it was all abbreviated words and then a smiley face. And you're like,
period.
Are you seriously sending this professional email to multiple people?
But this goes back to the original topic, which is how are millennials changing the way that we work and what is the net result of that? And I think that I know as a business owner, I've completely had to adjust to that, unless it's to the point where I feel like we're dealing with, so we have a phenomenal 30-year-old photographer. She's great, exceptionally talented, does so much work, and she puts together a treatment, and then you gotta rewrite the treatment because it's going to a 45 or 50-year-old guy who's gonna make the decision on where the job's going. But her images are stunning, and her thought process about how she got there is amazing. Her ability to communicate the thought process is probably a little less advanced than you'd want it to be. So, but that's why you have a team of people.
Do you spend time teaching that, or do you just redo it?
You can't teach that. At this point, she's 30. I don't want her to study photography, and I want her to spend her time making the greatest images in the world. And then I'll put together a team around that says, explain your thought process to me, and we'll put it in the best possible verbiage that we can, and then we'll kick it out. So I could ask her to go try to read and...
What if she came to you and said, I want to learn to be able to communicate this?
I'd say, great, on your off time, I'd love for you to do that, because that's the time I'm not paying for. I'm paying you to be a photographer.
Yeah.
That's good. No, I like it. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Which actually I think brings us naturally to the last topic, which is entrepreneurship.
Sure.
And so, as the business owner at the table, how do I want to phrase the question?
Sure.
If you could do it all over again, knowing what you know now about running a business, what advice would you give to a young person, or anybody for that matter, who wants to start their own business?
I would say what most people do when they start a business is they have a passion for doing something. I have a great idea for an app. I have a great idea for a video company, yada, yada, yada. And they don't realize that they're part of a larger system that involves taxes, the law, accounting, everything else that goes with it. So either, and this is the hard part, there's only so many hours in the day, so you can either spend your time trying to figure that stuff out on your own, or you can try to find somebody who's really good at that. But even then, you can't trust them 100%. You need to know. And they also, I know so many people, I got a good buddy who's a lawyer. He kills it, blah, blah. I'm like, no, your buddy's a divorce lawyer. Doesn't know shit about writing a contract for you. It's going to set you up in business and negotiate an NDA. That's not going to happen. So I just say, listen, if you're going to start a business, understand it's a lifestyle. You need to be consumed by your business. And if you're not willing to put in the time, effort, and passion, it's not just a check that just comes to you and you get free money and you get to work less and all that. You actually end up working probably 3 times as much as anybody else, and you're responsible for literally, and I feel this way all the time, you're responsible for the livelihoods of every single person who works for you, and not just them, but their extended families, and in some cases their extended families.
Right.
And it's a massive responsibility, so don't jerk it off. Like, actually do the work. If you don't want to do the work, then do not start a business, because it's not just free money. It doesn't work like that.
All right.
And being a boss does not just mean that you get to do whatever you want. You earn the respect of the people that work with you. You don't get it by a title. You don't get it by anything else.
I would think you would require a lot of discipline too.
You have to. You have to be consistent, and you have to be willing to be wrong, and you have to be willing to admit you're wrong, and you have to find the individual trigger of each person that works for you, and go, and I don't care. I've had 2,000 people work for me in different call centers, and I've had 23 or 24, whatever people we have now, that you still have to find the individual button. It's not easy. One thing I don't like about large corporations, and when I wanted to start my own business, was I thought everything was always geared towards the least common denominator. You have 1% of morons, and so you make up a rule that, you can't just wear your, white snake jeans into work today with your crappy tank top. Like, you gotta at least look a little better than that or something. You gotta make an effort. Whatever the rule is, and I don't even think that's an important rule, but it is in a bigger company, clearly. And I hated those rules. I thought they were stupid. They literally were geared towards the 1% who were dumb that you had to hire.
Yeah.
So, nice thing.
I'll be honest, that made me just think of the 1% that wouldn't pay for their own health insurance that you now pay for 100% for everyone.
And if it was 1%, I would be thinking that was awesome. But we had such a young group of employees that none of them would have paid for it. And I'm with you. I agree.
So it's interesting.
But there's things in my mind that are hot buttons. Like, we started the insurance policy because we hired a kid from Arizona. His wife was 4 months pregnant and had never been to see the doctor.
Wow.
And I'm like, you can't do that. That is just, one, you're being wrong to your kid, at that point, and you don't know what's going on. You have to take some responsibility here and get this thing straightened out. And if you're not willing to do it, then we're going to step in and do it. And that's how the policy started, to be perfectly honest, and that's back when we had 6 employees. So.
It's much larger than 1%.
Yes. Not now.
Yeah. So I was reading this thing, and it was saying that there was a study done by this French-based organization for economic cooperation and development on U.S. teens, and I think it's probably a good place to end. Said that out of the 30,000 teens that they studied, 1 in 6 U.S. teens failed to reach even a baseline level proficiency with financial literacy. And I think that really kind of brings it back to the original, I guess, intent of today's topic, in that, as a nation and as individuals even, we definitely need to do a lot better in teaching our young people about money and about how to take care of their financial life and their financial health. I think your analogy of going to eat the buffet is probably pretty good, because you can definitely eat the buffet. You can eat the buffet every week, but you need to be counterbalancing that with eating relatively healthy, trying to get some exercise, everything else, the other 6 days a week. You can't go eat the buffet or McDonald's or whatever 7 days a week and expect that you're going to stay a trim, fit, weight for your height. So I think it's the same with money, or just financial literacy in general. If we don't make some attempt to, teach our young people about money, and to some degree, excuse me, if there isn't some attempt by us individually, to just give a damn about, our own financial health and literacy, we will be at the mercy of whoever's in office. And I remember there was this movie, and I reference it and laugh about it a lot, but it really kind of scares me. There was this movie called Idiocracy.
Yeah.
That guy goes back in time and finds that he is the smartest person, and he was the most average guy in the world. And but when he goes not back in time, he goes into the future, and he realizes that just basic stuff, the American population had abandoned. They weren't watering their crops with water. They were watering them with basically Gatorade because it had electrolytes. And of course, nobody knew what an electrolyte was. And they were also wondering why all the crops were dying. And when he said, well, you have to water them with water, they were like, the stuff in the toilet? And so, I think in order to avoid that future, which, watching this election cycle scares me that we may be barreling toward at a much faster rate than I would be comfortable with, we have to start caring about what we know and what we don't know, whether it's our finances or what are your local laws, like just such. I don't expect anybody overnight to become a brainiac and suddenly just become this walking spouter of just Trivial Pursuit knowledge. But I do think that if you live in Kansas City, you should probably know if you don't like, let's say, the cigarette tax that they're trying to propose. Well, what is it, and why is that possibly a good or a bad thing? Or if, like, I'm originally from Chicago, and they imposed a really high, really stiff, cigarette tax, just to say. So, whereas, a pack of cigarettes in Kansas City might be, $5 or $6, the same pack of cigarettes in Chicago is $10. But knowing what that law is and why that law is in place probably would be a good thing, instead of just going, well, cigarettes are $10. Well, yes, cigarettes are $10, but why did it get that way? Everybody a couple of months ago was talking about Brexit and how the European, how that country voted to get out of the European Union. But the crazy thing is, I think everybody who thought, it would never happen, stayed home because they just assumed it would never happen. And then when they woke up, oh shit, we left the EU and the most Googled the most Googled searches were
In Europe.
in Europe is what is Brexit and what is the EU, because because they were literally voting for something that they had no idea what they were talking about. So
We talk about that all the time.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
have opinions and they don't know why they have the opinion. They don't do their own research or have their own thought. They just listen to what everybody's saying and, oh, that must be right, so that's what I'm going to believe too.
Groupthink.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it drives me insane when you ask somebody a question and their response is, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to take the time to tell you. No, you obviously don't know.
I will challenge you to never use Rotten Tomatoes.
which is funny because I use Rotten Tomatoes all the time.
I do too.
I don't necessarily.
I read it, but
take
I'm
it
like,
as
I don't
law.
agree with that.
I don't take it as law, but I definitely, because I'm a huge movie fan, I do look at Rotten Tomatoes to see what
You want to spend your money on?
what the ratings are, and do I want to spend my money on that, and I think that gets me back to the original point before I close out, in that just a little bit of research can save you a lifetime of financial pain.
Chris does not agree.
Yeah.
No, it's not that I don't agree. I think just research is not just Googling something and going to the sites that you like.
Yes.
Research
No,
is actually
I
going
think
to the
it's-
things that you don't like and actually accepting the challenge of formulating opinions.
I
Right.
think you're absolutely right.
I agree with
just
that.
watching Fox News doesn't make you researching anything. Neither does watching MSNBC. At some point, you watch them all and go, okay, I think I've made up my mind on what I want to do.
What I want to do. And I think with that, we've hit the point that we've hit at every podcast, and that is the point where I end this with the toast that started it all for me, and that